Welcome back to our Growing Experiment. We're here with Steph from Triple Star Acres Farm. So, Steph, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, the business, the farm, and how you got started?
Sure. Thanks for having me. I'll do my best to kind of keep it uh, keep it light and fun, and tell you as much as I can. But my husband and I bought the farm about 2 years ago. Um, so we are both from Northern Ontario. We are outdoorsy family. I was born about 8 hours north of here, so I'm a girl that can bait my own hook and take a fish off the hook myself. My husband was born in Quebec and eventually moved further north of here, and that's where he spent his childhood. So I was blessed. My grandparents had a hobby farm just outside of Sault Ste. Marie. So that's where I spent my summers as a child. So they did basically crop vegetables, maple syrup, and then my grandfather also milled wood and sold it across the border. Um, and Tommy's family still to this day, they own a dairy farm. Well, dairy, chicken, and pork is what they do in Quebec. So that farm still exists, and that's where he spent his summers as a child. And we both share very fond memories. And like I said, I learned how to grow from my grandparents, and I don't think it gets any better than that, to be perfectly honest. Um, Anyways, then as the pandemic hit, we have three small children, and we just technology was really taking over their lives, to be perfectly honest. And we wanted them to have a childhood where they were outdoors like we were. And we decided an opportunity came up to buy this farm. And we were very blessed. And I still feel very grateful to this day that everything panned out and kind of here we are. So we love the outdoors. I love my garden. The livestock, just the lifestyle, to be perfectly honest. So we're in a really great place.
That's awesome. And I always have to ask when people say they're from farther north because I'm from farther north myself. So I'm from Vermilion Bay, which is way up on Highway 17. It's about 17 hours from here northwest. And
Yep,
so where is it you're from?
I'm from Hornpain.
Horn
So
Pain?
Hornpain, so a little
Okay.
very small railroad town just outside of Kapuskasing and Hearst.
Okay.
My dad was worked for the railroad in CN for CN, and yeah, that's where I was born.
Back where I'm from too, there was lots of railway work in the early days and stuff, and lots of logging stuff like that. Mostly it's uh, what do you call it now? Tourism, like fishing camps, hunting camps, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then, yeah.
My so my godparents, who are like my family, so they're my aunt and uncle. But my uncle's brother, he still owns a fly-in fishing camp close to Hornpain to this day. And then actually, when you talk about um, tourism, so my husband, his dad worked at the mill in Shining Tree when he was younger, and as he got to be a teenager, he was a guide at one of the hunting camps for the Americans. So that's how he spent his teenage years.
Okay, so yeah, that's kind of cool. Like I have some sort of familiarity with, pardon me, with some of the stuff that you kind of would have grew up around in a way. Like my small town kind of growing up experience sounds like it was probably pretty small to yours and your husband's. And
Yeah,
that's cool. That's awesome to hear too that you have that tradition in both your families of this sort of
Closer to nature
closer to
kind of.
nature, traditional kind of living and stuff like that. And so, yeah, and you made that mention too of like, the technology and how we kind of get too wrapped up in that. And growing up in the sort of way that we would have grown up, you definitely see that, right? Like, and it's not just rosy colored glasses, I don't think, because I mean, we've had both now, right? You kind of see what it's like to have constant technology and you know what it's like to have none of it, right?
exactly. And I mean, I was a girl, right, that was catching frogs in a pond my whole summer type thing. And I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it for the world, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I don't want to show my age necessarily, but there was no Netflix and we only had a couple of channels. And, so I mean, I think that creative, imaginative play is so important for your childhood, and playing hide and go seek in the bush. And, my mother yelling at me to come in for dinner, but not knowing where I was, right? Like things like that, where now everything is very, very structured. And time is so precious, and life is so busy, that I think, just getting outside and spending time together as a family, whether it be, in your garden, picking carrots. My kids love to pick carrots. They love to pick potatoes. It's like an Easter egg hunt for them, to be perfectly honest. And I love to see that they're with me every day, and that's what I want. So, again, very, very blessed.
Yeah, it's great to see that, you had that childhood and you were seeing that your children had a different one, and you really wanted them to experience what you've experienced and all the changes you made. It's really great. And how are the kids adjusting to it?
Oh, they love it. I think that it's hard work, right? We work every day. But I mean, I don't think it's necessarily seen as work where you're attached to an office or a computer or whatnot, right? 9 to 5. They'll say, Mommy, I want to go to the park, as an example. And it's like, okay, well, we have these chores to do first. And once we do our chores, then, we can go and do that. Okay. And they help me, right? And I think that it's teaching them work ethic. It's teaching them methods of sustainability, right? Because we go through the growing process every year, and they see what's coming out of the garden. They eat what's coming out of the garden right from the garden, which is what I did as a child. You know what I mean? You pull a carrot and you eat it. There's nothing better. There's nothing better than a garden tomato, right? And it's beautiful. Even, with the animals, they see them grow, right? All of our livestock, they see them grow. They learn about, the nutritional components, and about making sure that they live in a clean environment and that they're happy, because that's very, very important to me. As much as, you're raising them for consumption, everybody deserves to have a beautiful life, right? A quality life. And you're responsible for that. It's your responsibility to do that. So my kids are learning responsibility at the same point in time. And it's, and like I said, I like having them with me, and I think that it teaches them work ethic. And, I mean, even goals as a family, right? Like to see, okay, we worked really hard to prepare our garden, and then we planted, and look what we provided to the community. So like, it's an honor. It's an honor to feed people who aren't able to do that. So.
Yeah, it's great to hear all the things you're saying about that too, because us starting out when we started, because we really started the garden, I guess, 4 years ago. This will be our 4th season. Yeah, so this will be our 4th season, and we've kind of added on a little bit, and we've learned lots. We've learned lots, especially over the last couple of years, especially with this podcast. We've learned tons. And that's the thing, too, that we found when we talked to lots of farmers and people who have families, especially around the farm. And that's definitely something we want to provide for our family, too, is like we have the garden and stuff like that. And the education that you talked about there is different, too, because we're not talking about a textbook and carrots in theory. We're talking about carrots in practice, right? And we're talking about dealing with different, not ideal soil types. We're talking about dealing with, like, oh, we don't actually grow those here because we don't like them because they don't like the soil or whatever, like whatever it is, right? And you start becoming a lot more aware of the applications of the biology, the applications of the chemistry and all that kind of stuff. And although you may not know like the technical terms of everything, though, you know how a lot of stuff works. And then when they start to get into, say, higher learning, if they decide to go that route, they're gonna be like, oh yeah, this is kind of like this, or oh yeah, like they have a sort of basis that they can kind of add to in a way, right? They can say like, oh yeah, this is kind of like this is kind of like this, because so many of these systems sort of overlap with each other. And then when you talk about like the actual learning about work ethic, right? It's not like, you tell them you should work hard. It's good to work hard. It's like, when we work hard, look at what happens. Like, look how awesome this is. Look at the food we've created. And then look at how we're providing a service to our community. Like, isn't it great that we can help out our community? Isn't it great that we can provide like ethical food for people at reasonable prices? And like, I mean, that sounds like a fulfilling, that sounds like exactly like the kind of life that a person like me would want to have. That's exactly it.
It's absolutely it. And I mean, so my grandfather is no longer here, right? So, I mean, to think about that generational knowledge that has been passed on, like I want to continue that tradition and be able to pass it on to my kids. And I mean, my dream one day is to look out my window and see houses built with my grandchildren running around and my family still on the farm. Whether that happens or not, I have no idea. But, you know, that's what I want. And as you get older, and I mean, your grandparents play such a pivotal role in your life. Like I still can't make a pie. I never took that from my grandma. Right. And now I'm never going to, you know what I mean? When you think about things like that, like I will never eat that again. My grandma, she's still here, but she's not well. Anyway, so when you think about that knowledge, and I mean, you can't take everything, but I'm grateful for what I did learn, and I want to provide that to my children, and I want them to benefit from that. That's knowledge from their great grandparents, right? So I don't think you can't learn it. It has to be taught.
And what you're pointing out there is something that I'm kind of realizing adds another layer of depth that I never really understood before, but like, carrying on that tradition, what you pointed out there is it carries on the spirit of that person, right? That is the experience of learning that thing that you had, that memory, and then passing on that memory to like, your children and stuff. And them knowing that ties back to grandpa, like you have this sort of connection all the way back through your family, which it runs this groove into your family. Like, this is important, and it's important because this is how we have our way of doing things. And it's our way of doing things that we figured out going back, your grandfather, your great grandfather, and there's something really cool about that because you feel like you're a part of something. You're part of, and I mean, I say this sometimes because I think it's a really cool thing. All of us that are alive today, really, we have ancestors going right back to the dawn of time in varying different forms or however you believe, right? I mean, at least if you want to look at from whatever model you believe in, you got here from somebody who got here from somebody who, and so on and so on and so on and so on, right? And when you're aware of that and you keep some part of that spirit alive, that tradition, that family, it's like, you know why you're a part, like you feel like you're a part of something, like it matters, right? It's like we have our traditions, we do things this way. It's because that's how we do our things.
Absolutely. And then, I mean, I think, again, I don't want to talk about the pandemic. The pandemic's been spoken about enough, to be perfectly honest. But I mean, at the same point in time, when you think about the food shortages that were experienced and things in that nature, sustainability just in general, right? I think it's really important. I think it's really important to be able to grow your own food, even from a cost perspective as well, right? And I didn't have, so the farm is on 80 acres. We have 80 acres. We farm on 15. So we have 65 that are undeveloped, right? And even prior to this, I've had small gardens, I've had bigger gardens, and you would be very, very surprised, and you guys can speak to it because I see the beautiful work that you do in the space that you have. You can produce a lot in a very small space. And you think about, I think I'm very blessed. I preserve a lot in the winter so that I'm eating out of my garden all winter, my family. I'm sure you guys do too. But, to pay the prices, I think celery was like $7 or something like that in the grocery store. I noticed recently, like that's a lot, right? It's a lot. Food is very, very expensive. So, I mean, if we can teach future generations how to grow their own food, it makes the cost of living reasonable, right? To raise, like we're a family of 5. And the bill that's attached to that is substantial every month, right? To put healthy, I say it again, healthy food into our families. So, and I know you guys, I've met your little babies and they're adorable. But I mean, it's important. It's important for their health. You don't want to feed them junk, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
As
mean,
we, sorry.
go ahead.
Yeah. As we've learned a lot more about that, and the one thing you said too about the pandemic, like we've talked about it a lot, but then you kind of were stressing the point, and what I got out of that too, in a way, was we shouldn't forget either the things we learned. I think we all, if we were paying attention, I think a lot of us had an opportunity to learn a lot about a lot of things. And food security and where that stuff comes from and how fragile the system we live in and all that, that was definitely one of the things that if you're paying attention, yeah, you should be focusing on that. And then when you want to talk about health and all that, that's another thing highlighted from the pandemic too, right? Because we know for sure that people who were sick were more likely to get sicker.
Mm-hmm.
So the less sick you were, the less likely you are to get sick. And to maximize the possibility of being less sick, you have to have the best building blocks your body you can have access to, and that's the freshest, most nutrient dense, food you can get. And you want to have as close to nature, healthy raised, without the things that animals shouldn't have, and without the things that vegetables shouldn't have. And then when you have those things in place, the human body is actually a wonderfully resilient thing. And I mean, you look, and again, going back to our human history and tradition, we've survived worse and in probably poorer conditions, a lot poorer conditions.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have to worry about dysentery anymore. I think it's dysentery. That's the one that you have to worry about, where you're basically your drinking water and your wastewater are getting mixed up, right? And that's what happens when you have these big cities start to grow. But, we've learned a lot of these things. And we can learn from our lessons and not make the same mistakes. So that's exactly it, right? We learned, we want to be able to produce our own food. And when you talk, like when you hear, I try not to listen to the news really anymore, but when you hear on the news all the time, one of the biggest concerns on there is young people are very worried about starting families, if they're considering that at all, because they don't even think they're going to be able to buy a house. And so they don't even think, like, if I can't afford a house, or like I can't provide some sort of prospect for a family, why would I bother investing in having a family? Because a family is an investment, right? Because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of patience and dedication. Like it's a lot of things, right? It's your whole life is what it is.
Yeah.
And these young people, and I can hardly blame them, are, a little skeptical about the investment. But with what you're teaching and what you're doing and sort of what we're aiming at doing too, it's like, no, there's a little more work, but you can actually get access to healthier food. You don't need a ton of space. There is a way. Where there's a will, there's a way. And then also, like, innovation always comes around when there's stress, or when there's the need of it, right? When there's the need of change, there's like a spirit almost of innovation that shows up, and it's like someone comes up with an idea and they're like, hey, you guys consider doing this? And then all of a sudden you're off and you're running in a new direction.
And that's what we're seeing in the farm store. So I think we're getting more and more, I know, we're getting more and more young families coming in that are really concerned with what is in their food, what is included in their food, right? So all of our meat is no antibiotics, no growth hormones, no steroids, and they no additives, right? So I mean, if you buy a pre-made hamburger patty, right, it's literally beef, salt, and pepper. That's it. That's all that's in our patties. They don't shrink. You can tell that there's no additives in them when you cook them, because they really hold their size. There's nothing else that's included in that. It's extremely, extremely clean. We also have people that are coming in with dietary restrictions or health concerns, my family included in that. So, I mean, my husband is restricted. He has some medical conditions. His family, same thing. My brother, same thing. And all in the Crohn's colitis kind of illness. And we have family members that literally have been eating our meat, some of our family members actually with the previous owners, so going on 3, maybe 4 years now, and no longer needing any medication. So, I mean, I think that it's a wonderful thing, right? My brother said to me, like, holy geez, Steph, I can tolerate your meat. Like, you know, I don't pay for it after I eat it type thing. And I don't want to go into too much detail about his situation, but I mean, at the same point in time, he's like, I feel great. Like, this is wonderful. We have young families coming in that are saying, like, you know, I'm very, very concerned with the ingredients that are in my kids' food, and they want to go through the process. There's other people that come in that want to just support local, right? They're so concerned with supporting local. Those other people that are coming in saying, you know what, we're just really not happy with the quality that's available right now. So they're going to local farms. I mean, I think that kind of the change that we've seen it's a beautiful thing. I think our community is wonderful. I think that people are really wanting, and not actually wanting, they are supporting local. We get new people in all the time. Nope, I want to support local. I want to support local farms. And it's a beautiful thing, because at the same point in time, they're allowing farms like us to do what we love. They're allowing us to support a family by doing something that we love, to go back to tie it into, you know, kids learning, right? Generational knowledge, and they're allowing the opportunity for them to do that. It's creating so many opportunities for people. And I think it's happening more and more and more. And I mean, I encourage all the time for people to just go out. There's so many farms doing unique things in our community, and give them a try, right? And if maybe, you know, you don't find a product that you like, give somebody else a try. It's like I said, there, you know, and everything from garlic to mushrooms to meat to veggies to greens to, you know, the opportunities are just, I don't know, people are doing amazing things in our little greater city of Sudbury, and I think it's wonderful. And also, I think that the local farms are really open to sharing the knowledge that they have. They will talk to you, right? It's not transactional. It's gratitude, but at the same point in time, they love talking about what they do. They love sharing information. They love coming together as a community. So, you know, everything in my store is not all mine, right? I'm happy to bring in other local products and help other local businesses succeed. And there's many people that are doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, I know. Like, I think we see that a lot too, and I love to see it, because I also think it's one of those things that can bring together so many people from so many sort of different areas and different beliefs and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's one of those things that like supersedes politics and all that kind of stuff, because people can get so mired in that. And that's why, like I mentioned earlier, not even really wanting to watch the news anymore, because it's so like everyone's got a reason to be upset with somebody, you know? And then when you're talking about this stuff, I'm like, isn't that nice? Like, these people just come in and they're like, I want to support my community. And so they think, how do I support my community? Well, I make money and these people make food. I need food. Let's go give it to them. And then, like you said too, you know, if you're a person who's really concerned, especially with making sure that a person can have like access to dignified work and provide community and all that other kind of stuff, and you want to invest in that, support a local farm.
Absolutely.
You want to talk about people who are in touch with like hard work and all that kind of stuff, and the ethics of hard work and all that kind of stuff, talk to a local farmer. And you want to know, like, you know, support and community and stuff like that, yeah, go talk to a local farmer. Like you said, they're willing to answer your questions, and they're willing to answer your questions because they're passionate about what they do, and they want to do the best that they can do because they're passionate about what they do. There's something that I get the impression of when I talk to the people that we talk to with this podcast and the different farmers we come into contact with, is there's something that's driving them that's more important to them than money. Like they really care about doing something in the world, and it's
I do.
inspiring.
Well, and I can honestly say that probably, and I would blanket this statement for every farm in our community. They care about our community. They love our community, right? They love the people in our community. They are passionate, hardworking individuals. And I mean, I think that, again, they're doing wonderful things. They're working day in and day out. But at the same point in time, if you went and said, we're doing this type of fundraising thing or that type of event, they're the first one to say, yeah, I'm in, right? Like, it's a good cause. We want to help. Um, you know, it's, it's wonderful, wonderful people. And even, sometimes there's still, you get stumped, right? You'll be in your garden or dealing with an issue with your livestock and you're like, I don't know what is going on, right? But there's always somebody to call to ask, right? And they're always happy to help you. So the support that, the local farming community provides to each other is phenomenal.
Yeah, and as somebody who, like, if somebody hasn't been to a farm or hasn't talked to a farmer, like, it's not something that's intimidating either, right? Like, you could just
No.
walk up to a farm and talk to a farmer. And I think there's also, the argument saying that it's more convenient going to the grocery store, but we've purchased off you many times, and there's no inconvenience at all. Because even after a certain amount of money, you even deliver, which is really helpful for us.
Yep.
Being at home with the kids, right? So the argument that it's more convenient going to the grocery store, I don't really believe that, because I think you can make things happen if you really want them to happen. And if you really care about what you're putting into your body, if you care about health, you're going to make those efforts.
Yeah. No, I mean, we bring the farm right to your door if you need me to, right? And I'll sit there and shoot the breeze as long as you like me to. And Sophia, you know that. But I mean, you're proud of what you do, right? So at the same point in time, it's a great way to meet people. You get to meet people's kids, right? Which, I mean, there is a sense of pride in feeding your family, right? You're trusting me to feed your family. And I think that that's a really big deal. So.
Yeah, I agree as well. Even like just talking about feeding little ones, like our little guy, he's 7 months, so he just started eating too. And just like even the things we think about giving them at that stage is so important. Like we do baby-led weaning, so like we'll give him a piece of carrot like the size of my finger and go at it, and it's being able to give him stuff that I know where it's coming from is really rewarding, I think. Anyway, I think it'll be really good for him. I know we did the same with our daughter, and people talk, right? So we only gave her sweets after she was 2, and she's 2 now. And people think, oh, poor kid, whatever. But as the parent, you're responsible for what your child is eating. And we wanted to give her the proper building blocks, like Jordan said. And I think, everybody has the way they want to do it, but
kids are smart, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it just tastes better. There's, you know what I mean? You pull a tomato out of like, I love garden tomatoes. I think you could probably get that for me. There is nothing better. Or a carrot, right? Like, why does a carrot taste different in the summer than when the ones you buy in the winter in the grocery store? Well, there's a lot of reasons, right? But I mean, I think, fresh food it just tastes better. And kids know the difference. They really, really do, right? So.
Yeah, and with the tomato, that's such a good example, because like when you think about the store tomato, even when you look at the flesh on the inside, it's kind of a lighter color, right? And when you bite into it, it's more of a watery taste than anything. And even the not the flesh, but the juice sort of jelly part of the tomato, I don't know what you'd properly call that. But anyways, like in the ones that you grow at home, I notice it kind of holds together a little bit better. And even when you bite into the tomato, the firmness in the skin, the way the skin sort of tears as you bite into it, and then the texture, like you're immediately struck with sort of like a taste in the beginning, and then it sort of develops on your palate too as it goes. And it's like you said, like it's undeniable. And
Undeniable.
yeah, it makes a huge difference. And you do have that pride too, like you're saying. Like for us too, like we got all kinds of pickles and salsa verde left over, and it's just kind of cool to have. Yeah, oh yeah, we're having burritos tonight. We're gonna put a little bit of salsa on there that we made ourselves, and we got our own pickles we can have on there. And you mentioned earlier that you do a lot of preserving and store all your food. That's what we're really gearing up for this year. We have a cold room set up, and this will be our first year that we're gonna like really store a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
I think we made like 30 jars of pickles last year, but you can't exactly survive on pickles. Although
No.
it is nice to have, like you figure out what a jar of pickles is worth. I mean, I guess we got that much money worth of pickles, which is
And they're
good.
delicious.
And they're delicious. But like,
Right.
yeah, what we're gonna do is try to grow and store as much as more as possible, and then there too, like you're learning another skill too, right? You
Yeah,
learn
absolutely.
how's your food preserved, what goes into food preserving.
Yeah. Well, and I mean everything from, what did I do this year? I did beans, green beans, yellow beans, carrots, corn on the cob. You can actually freeze corn on the cob.
Oh,
And just,
really?
yes, boil it up and eat it all winter. So, we've eaten from our garden basically year round. Is it the same as a fresh cucumber or a fresh tomato? No, it's not. But I'll take what I can get, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, jarred tomatoes, stewed tomatoes, and it's not all that hard to do. And again, I mean, we have this big, beautiful garden. Why wouldn't we take advantage of it for the winter? And just again, know where our food's coming from. So.
Yeah, that's our goal. And with the preserving, you're right, it's not very challenging. I find it's time consuming. That's been our challenge. But
You have to just book the time off. Like our harvest was kind of like all over the place. We did a better job of planning our planting and stuff, so I think we'll have more consistent harvests rather.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I think we'll be able to plan all right, this weekend, we're doing a bunch of canning, or this night we're doing a bunch of canning because we got a bunch of stuff or whatever, instead of it being like all over the place.
Oh, and we're trying to grow so much food that really we can invite our family over to help us, and everybody gets some at the end, right?
Yeah, no, that's what we do, right?
Mm-hmm.
My mother-in-law, my mom, anybody who's available, really, right? Come over and get it done. We had some extended family up from Quebec in August, which is perfect timing from a harvest perspective. So they really, really helped. But my husband's grandmother, so my kid's great grandmother, was here, and she is 93, and you have never seen a woman be able to tip vegetables like she can, right? Like a bushel of beans was done in lightning time. So, so I mean, we were really able to take advantage of that. And I mean, at the same point in time, you're also spending time together, right? So it's nice.
Yeah, and that's so much too of like when you look in like history and how much the family dynamic has changed in the last 100 years, like where you have like so many people living on like sustenance farms, and then like they maybe grow a bit of surplus and doing some stuff like that, to people like widely having no contact with their food at all. And another point you made earlier was like your kids being familiar with the animals and stuff and seeing the animals' life and stuff. There is a lot of people who have no real understanding at all where any of their meat comes from, and it's it's not really a complicated moral issue. It's a very it's not very good what's going on and how we produce our meat on a huge scale. It's I don't think it's ethically sustainable. I mean, like I don't know. It just seems unconscionable when we know that we know there's farms that exist like yours that work. I mean, the problem is, I guess, of course, we have a huge population built because we have huge industrial farming, right? And so I don't know. I guess maybe I could use that as an inroad to start talking about sort of maybe farming and how it relates to business and how it relates to things like that.
Sure. Like we're moving into so we're getting ready. We're starting our chickens next week, actually. Um, so I'll kind of take you through that process because that's what I'm living right now. But we are licensed with the Chicken Farmers of Ontario. So we are quoted, what that means. So we're allowed to raise a certain amount of chickens every year, and we're able to work with them. They're a wonderful group of people. Um, but it's not just, a farm cannot just say, oh, I'm going to raise, 3,000 chickens and nobody's checking on them, right? So there is a program that you go through to be able to do this. And you receive, again, very, very, very supportive community. So you're mentored through the process. There's courses that you have to take regarding animal handling and biosecurity and sterilization and, a slew of different things. But I mean, knowledge is power. And again, wonderful group of people. So I can literally pick up the phone, and I'm telling you right now, I'm able to get a hold of somebody basically whenever I want to. So if I run into an issue, I do have that support, and I'm very confident to say pretty much 24/7. Also, the previous owners that own this farm have been so wonderful to us and so supportive because this is their legacy. They're the ones that created this. The Labin family created this farm. And I have pictures in the store of what the house looked like when they bought it, and what they turned it into is absolutely amazing. They are wonderful, wonderful people. I'm sorry, that's my family. That's community focused. And, very, very, very blessed and proud that they chose us to be continuing this farm in the community. Now, going back to the Chicken Farmers of Ontario, because I'm digressing. So what happens is, right now we're getting ready. The barn's being sterilized. There's a process that we have to follow to make sure that it's ready because our chickens that we're getting on next week is they're finicky. You need your conditions to be absolutely perfect for them to thrive in the environment. So there are no cages or anything along those lines. They're raised in a clean, sterile, spacious environment with fresh water. We plant gardens for them to eat as naturally as possible. So once they're fully feathered and they can stand the temperatures outside, those barn doors open every morning. They're outside. They're foraging for bugs. They're running around. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Again, going back, so my garden is probably my favorite place on the farm to be in the summer. But at the same point in time, when you look and you see all the livestock that are surrounding you, and then I'm a dog lover. So I have my 2 Pyrenees that are outside that are, they're guardian dogs. They're there to protect the livestock. But at the same point in time, they're my loves, right? So to be in nature and be in that environment, it's my happy place. At the same point in time, so once we get to the point where we're harvesting our chickens, the ministry is there. And those chickens are so inspected so closely that, it's every chicken is inspected prior to deeming it ready for consumption. So a farm is not able to, to harvest the chickens themselves and just sell them to the public. There are regulations surrounding that you're expected, that you have to adhere to. Our facility, our barn, is also inspected by the Chicken Farmers of Ontario on a yearly basis. So they come in, they make sure that we're doing everything that we're supposed to be doing, that the animals are being treated humanely, and that they're happy, because everybody deserves to have a good life, right? And I think that, people will come into the store and they say, like, your chickens aren't chickens, they're turkeys, right? Like, because they're so big. And I'll say it's because they're happy, right? We don't feed them. They eat, like their feed is available. We do offer non-GMO feed, as well as they're able to eat as naturally as they want to. So it's just, in all honesty, it's like a human, right? They really choose their diet. They choose when they want to eat. They choose when they want to play. They choose when they want to go outside, when they want to go inside. And that's why, that it also leads to a more tender meat for us, but because there's no stress, right? They're happy.
Yeah, and I can definitely attest to the size and then the tenderness of the chickens because they are both large and tender.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, they were great because there was, I think it might have been one of the first times that Sophia had bought one of your chickens, and I didn't know that she had bought one of your chickens, and I thought she had went to the store because it was the same size. It wasn't the same color, but I mean, like, it was the same size, right? And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. And I was like, oh, this is pretty good. And she's like, oh yeah, I got that from Triple Star. I said, oh really? I said, wow, that's big. Because we had other chickens before too, and a lot of times when they're free range, they're a little bit smaller than what you get at the store.
Yeah.
And I mean that's fine, right? It's just a little bit different. But yeah, your chickens they're quite large.
Thank you. And I mean, genetics come into play as well too, right? But it's like I said, they're happy. It's nice. They're doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing, right? I know people, you look on the internet and people see these videos of chickens and, they're only in cages for their entire lifespan. And that is not the case here. Mm-hmm. And I can honestly probably safely say that that's not the case at any local farm. People want animals to be raised ethically and humanely. So again, just another benefit of visiting your local farm.
Yeah, and I know that you've mentioned that you're more in the garden and with the chickens. Can you tell us a little bit about your pigs and your cows?
So our beef is housed on Manitoulin Island. So we don't have any cattle on our property. We do raise turkey and pork as well. The beef is Black Angus beef. We do dry age our beef for 30 days. So it's beautiful grass-fed beef. But no, you won't see a cow when you visit the farm. Then we also do turkeys for Thanksgiving every year, and pork as well. Like I said, I'm kind of more in the garden, and I tend to deal more with chickens. So when you get into doing multiple things, I think you kind of have experts in certain areas on different things. So I'm very blessed. My father-in-law and my mother-in-law help me quite a bit, as well as my husband and then my kids. So we're just a little family farm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I mean, like that's exactly what you need to have when you have that little family farm, right? You got to have everyone kind of helps in with their little specializations and stuff like that. So I guess getting back to the chickens then, because that's a little more of your specialty. When it come to like, say, when you were getting started with the program and stuff, what are sort of the first considerations you had to really what were the ducks you had to get in a row, so to speak?
I think the previous owners we had met with the Chicken Farmers of Ontario. They agreed to mentor us for the full year. So I had them there supporting us the whole way to make sure. And I mean, at the same point in time, because we did go through the avian flu as well. So biosecurity measures were even more heightened than what they are previously. And I think that's what people don't understand, right? A lot of people come into the store and say, are we able to tour the farm? And because we're raising animals for consumption, we really have to be concerned with disease, right? So what's on the bottom of your boots? What's on the bottom of your tires if someone's pulling into the back? So we don't do community tours because we can't guarantee that, you visited somewhere else that potentially there were, they had something that you don't want to contract into your barns. So we're very, very safe that way. But I mean, I think that again, over the before we started raising the chickens, there was different courses that we had to do. We had to sit in on different webinars. We had to spend time with a vet to kind of go through the ins and outs of what we need to do, what we need to look for, everything from getting your water tested to how you properly sanitize a barn in between batches of chickens, as well as in preparation for the season. The importance of, again, right, their diet, how to, and I don't know if I can explain this properly, but if you look a chicken in the eye, you can tell whether they're happy or not. There's a vibrancy. So it's learning how to really read your animals, your livestock, to know whether they're happy or not, because they can't communicate with you verbally per se, but there are signs that you can look for to make sure to know that they're healthy and happy, because you want those perfect conditions for them. You also have to learn temperature, because as they're babies, you need a certain temperature in your barn. And then as they get bigger, you need to slowly kind of drop that temperature. I mean, I guess just like a newborn baby. Well, I don't know if that's true or not, right? You always say, everyone kept their newborn babies wrapped up. And now I don't know if that's necessarily the case anymore, but it's, they're literally, when you receive your chickens, they could be hatched that same morning. That's how new they are. So very, very fragile. Yeah. I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Yeah, no, it does. It kind of gives me an idea of like sort of what you would have to sort of start getting into. And you sort of talked about that a little bit when you were sort of talking about the overarching picture of kind of what went into it. And so it's lots and lots of education, lots and lots of like what the practices are to make it happen the right way and stuff like that. And then now I'm remembering one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, because you mentioned the avian flu, because we had visited a farm. What was the farm where they put on the mushroom thing?
Northern Feather Farm.
A Northern Feather Farm, and they have all different kinds of chickens. A lot of them are more like, what would be the right word for it? She had like crazy kind of looking chickens with like cool, like kind of like feathers on their heads and like different.
There's all different types. Absolutely.
Yeah. They weren't like meat chickens though. They were just like kind of pretty chickens, right?
Right.
But when that was going on, she was kind of talking about the same thing, where normally she would like to have the chickens out more, kind of doing their thing, but they couldn't really do that because they were concerned with the flu. And then even sometimes they would let people kind of go and see their birds a little bit more, but then they were really concerned again because of the flu. Because I guess if you step on a contaminated area, basically, you could track that into the pen. If that gets in one of those birds, as I understand it, it takes three days or something like that before they really display symptoms. And by then, they've probably infected your whole flock. And then at that point, you basically have to cull the whole flock, as I understand it. Is that basically right?
That is correct. So, I mean, there were some sad stories out there. So I think Northern Ontario, we didn't see it as much, but Southern Ontario, definitely, it got into people's barns, and they lost their whole flock and had to start again. And some people have more than one barn, right? So very, very, very sad situation. And then you have to be worried about, just migratory birds, right? And a bird naturally landing on your property. So my dogs do a pretty good job. But no, you definitely you have to be careful, and when it's your daily work, you don't want to just turn around and let it just naturally walk in there, right? So,
and then another question I guess I'd ask on that is like, does it kind of like come and go in waves, or is there's sort of like peak periods and low periods for transmission, or?
So I think from what I've learned, and I'm not in no way an expert, so it's just kind of the information that I have received from the Chicken Farmers of Ontario, it seems to be in the summertime. So it kind of started really in the spring last year, if memory serves me correctly, and then it kind of spread like wildfire for a little while. And then I think we've seen a dip because it got really, really hot, and that's what they were hoping for. They were hoping that the heat would kind of kill those germs off. But then it spiked back up again, and we didn't have a great summer last year, right? It was a little bit cooler. Then I mean, during the winter, most people you don't really hear too much. I haven't heard too much about it, but we'll see. Now is the time again where we'll see if it comes back or not. My guess is we probably will start hearing about it in the next little bit. Go from there.
Right. Because I guess in a way it does make sense that, like, say, like, once we have it in the area, I mean, unless there's sort of, for some reason, like there's something in the virus or disease or whatever it is that causes it to die out in some way, like, you know, eventually it runs out of hosts or whatever. Yeah. But if it, I mean, it's still around, so that doesn't seem to be the case. Because that's the other thing that I kind of wondered about, is that it's like, because it's got to be so hard to track, because like you mentioned migratory birds, right? Like, what are you going to watch every bird?
You can't. It's impossible.
Yeah, exactly. So like then it's like, you know, especially when you consider, like, you know, it's at least the impression I've received, like in the last few years especially, there's definitely been people leaning more towards free range chicken, because like you mentioned, the chicken are so much happier because the chicken want to be out there doing chicken things, right? And then it's sad to see at the same time we have this sort of growth where we have potential for these chickens to be living better lives, that there's now this sort of rise of this threat to that, basically. And I kind of wonder too, like, the avian flu, is that something, I wonder if it started off because of our sort of unsanitary chicken and practices, or fowl practices, or poultry practices rather, and then led to that, or if it was just like zoonotical, or if that would be the right word, like it got from the environment into or, you know, like, do you know anything about the history of it at all? Or
I don't. Maybe I should a little bit more, but I haven't done that much research to figure out exactly where, if they've determined where it ever kind of came from.
Because I feel like I remember it was years ago where I remember hearing about it lots in Asia, especially.
Yeah.
But again, because I lived in a small town, you kind of have this ability when you live in a small town, because you're so far from everybody. You're like, that's like so far away that it has nothing to do with me. So you just kind of forget about it. And I mean, now it's right there at the doorstep, so you can't really forget about it anymore. But I thought I remember it being something like that. But I mean, yeah, who knows where it come from? That might just be the first time that they identified an exact whatever it was, or that could just be the first time that I heard about it, or whatever, right? Because it's kind of interesting when you think about, especially in the last couple of years, like, you know, where certain things come from, how they develop, how they evolve, how they get into, in this case, the food supply, right? Like, you know, how, and then if we wanted to sort of stop it, could we stop it? Like, you know, like, let's say, like, you know, in the wintertime, if there's low to no infection in the wintertime, right? And let's say maybe it's got something to do with more control in the environment. And I'm not saying that's what it is, but let's just hypothetically take that as like the key factor, right? It's the isolation. If that's what the key factor is, then I wonder, like, you know, maybe if we did a season or two of like just indoor, and, you know, we'd have to do more work indoors because it'd be more work keeping it all clean and all that kind of stuff, that maybe we could like kind of, you know, it would die out because it wouldn't have enough. But then I guess you have the problem again of the migratory birds and stuff. Now you're not going to have the density, hopefully, in theory, but you're still going to have it living. It's still going to mutate. It's still going to pass on. So, I mean, even if you do that, I mean,
people with backyard chickens would keep doing that. Like,
yeah, like it's impossible to enforce. I mean, there's,
nice try.
I guess you just have to live with it, right? Like you kind of have to, I guess.
You want to become a scientist here?
No, I mean, it was just an interesting idea to me, so I went with it.
Oh. No, I mean, I don't, yeah, I think it's the migratory birds that there's not enough control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. You go and start shooting all the birds out of the sky, and then there's too many bugs. Then you got to kill all the bugs, but the bugs already ate all the food. Then we got bigger problems.
Yeah.
That's a story. I don't know if you've ever heard about that, but there was a period of time in China after communism had really took over. And I can't remember what the exact reason was, but they had decided that they didn't want any sparrows like anywhere. And so the people were out in the fields, and anytime a sparrow would go to land anywhere, they'd run out and scare it off the place it was going to land on. And so the sparrows basically died of exhaustion, and they did this all throughout the country, all over the place. And what ended up happening is the bugs that the sparrows would eat ate the crops because they didn't have a predator anymore, and it led to a huge famine. Kind of totally unrelated, except for the fact that it's about trying to kill all kinds of birds.
It's a cycle. Everybody plays their part.
Yeah, well, exactly, right? But yeah, I guess it's just another one of those things we got to learn to live with, right? And we just got to be as safe as we can and do what you can, right?
There's new things that are going to evolve all the time, right? So I think, it goes back to, from a farming perspective, your biosecurity measures that you have on the farm and being as diligent as possible. That's all that you can do.
And do you just sell your eggs at the farm store?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I know there's like a grading system if you wanted to sell them outside of the farm store. Do you know a little bit of information about that?
The grading system, again, not so much. But we only sell our eggs from our farm specifically. So, I mean, again, a lot of people were concerned with, recently in the news, there was, the feed issues and all of that kind of stuff, and chickens not producing eggs. And then what happened in the States, and it was really hard for them to get eggs. And that never took place in Canada, as far as I'm aware. No, I can't really speak to the grading system too much.
Okay.
That was an interesting thing that you brought up there too, where there was that mention of the feed shortage and stuff and the low egg production, because I had remembered hearing something about that too. And I heard a couple of different ideas what that might have been able to explain some of that too. And being that you're familiar at least with egg production that you do, so like over the life period of a chicken, basically, it'll have like sort of a peak period of egg production, and then it'll sort of dwindle off after that as it gets older, right? Mm-hmm. And depending on probably also the time in the season, there's probably a peak period relative to the season as well. That's probably got to do with conditions. And then if you add, say, some sort of food shortage in any kind of capacity on top of that, that could definitely be what kind of leads to your shortage in egg production, right? So,
I mean, I think conditions in general for any chicken are really, really, really important. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, but is there any? Does it make sense at all that there is like sort of ups and downs in sort of egg production? Like, will you notice that over the course of the year, say that your hens will produce more, say, in some time of the year? Or are they pretty consistent all year long?
It depends on the conditions. You have to make sure that they have a very well-rounded diet as well. They need heat, right? So they have to be kept warm.
Okay, so as long as you, well, I shouldn't say that. That sounds wrong. So because it sounds like, I mean, you mentioned at least earlier on too that they could be particularly finicky. They're very sensitive to temperature and stuff like that. And so it sounds like too, if you want them to be producers, it's kind of the same idea, right? Like you need to make sure the feed is just right, the heat's just right, because if they're a little cold or whatever, they're going to put their energy into staying warm and not producing eggs or whatever the case might be. Okay. So just another question unanswered.
What was your question?
Well, no, because I was just thinking like if people were getting like worked up about it, but like there's it just could be that there was something that was wrong with feed at the time or whatever it was. I was wondering if, maybe it was like I think sometimes it might be possible that people who have a job that is to go and write articles all the time might sometimes try to find articles that seem interesting and sometimes might lead towards things that may be inflammatory or exciting in some ways. And so, let's say, for example, if there was a sort of low point in egg production or whatever, and you've seen that, that's something that people would click on, especially if people eat lots of eggs. So, maybe I'm being a bit cynical. And really, it's just, sometimes, just something happens in the feed and chickens just don't want to lay eggs.
Well, it just kind of even focuses on the point of how much care you put into your chickens, right? Because if you want them to produce, you need optimal conditions. So you're checking all those boxes of everything.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's like that. It's like that for turkeys. I recently got some goats just for my family, and same thing, right? So my goats, my goats kidded a couple weeks ago. So we have little babies running around right now. But I mean, again, you have to make sure that everybody is well taken care of and happy.
Are you going to be having goat milk?
I don't know yet. So I mean, I only have, I have just a very small herd right now. And it's more just for my family and my family's enjoyment. And I mean, eventually they help with clearing the land. There's a lot of things that beneficially they help with around the farm. So I haven't decided. I'm just dabbling in that a little bit right now. And we'll see how it goes, but they're an absolute joy.
That sounds fun.
They are fun, and they're funny, they're friendly, I don't know, they have personalities, which is, it's amazing. It's I can't say they're very similar to dogs necessarily, but I mean, very similar. I have one goat that's super affectionate, one mama that's not so much. But I mean, she just had babies, right? So there's a little bit of territory issues there too. The babies, they're running around. They're super cute, and they bounce. They do bounce. If anyone's seen goat videos, that is 100% the case. They bounce all over the place, and they're super playful. My kids, again, right? And it's an experience to see, and they got to experience the birth of these babies, right? These kids, and so pretty amazing.
Yeah, and being around all of that too is kind of a cool thing because like goats, they're kind of like the way you were talking about them too. It made me think they're almost like they're like the gateway animal, Like you 1 minute you're like, maybe I'll get a goat, and then all of a sudden you're on a farm. Because I feel like a lot of people start out with goats because they sound like a lower maintenance to say some other different livestock options. At least they're a little bit more. I think you can feed them like on land that other animals can't graze on it. Like I think they can eat a little bit more diversely, I guess is the right word.
Yeah.
So is that a miss or an incorrect understanding that they're sort of easier to take care of or sort of less demanding, lower maintenance?
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. They're not, they're much more independent. They graze on basically what they can't eat is very, very limited, to be perfectly honest. They'll clear. So if for us, we wanted a little spot cleared on our property, and you just have to bring them over there, and they kind of help you do all the work, right? And then, but I mean, again, they're happy. They're happy to do it. It's not any work for them. They're enjoying it. I mean, again, making sure that their area is kept clean, I think, would probably be the biggest job. And then just regular hauling water, that type of thing. But other than that, I mean, they're a joy. They're wonderful. And at the same point in time, they also, they benefit just like any other livestock does from our garden, right? Because they eat quite a bit. So, I mean, if you have a cabbage that doesn't grow to the size that you like, they're happy to take it off your hands. So,
how big of a garden do you have?
I don't know. My garden's about, 10 acres probably in total. Big enough.
That's a big garden.
So
Yeah.
how do you kind of plan for that?
It's a process. Yeah, it's a process, but I mean, we kind of plan out our garden and we really focus on doing crop rotation and knowing the soil and what would do well where, and again, moving things around as much as we possibly can. And then planting is a job in itself. Like the prep work and planting is huge. Um, but once it's done, then you get to sit there and you get to see the beauty of watching it grow and watching it produce, right? So really, really rewarding.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes me wonder a little bit. So 10 acres for a garden. What's the real difference between, like, say, a garden and a farm? Because, like, we were talking to the Burley farmers, and the Burley farmers, the strategy that they use is they try to do like maximum food production on smaller scale, but they're selling like peppers and mostly peppers, I think is what they're selling, right?
No, they're selling everything.
Sorry, they're selling everything, but they also a lot of their social media, they have their peppers and stuff because they like peppers.
Yeah, they have cool
they like
peppers.
Exactly, yeah. But anyways, they've grow a lot of stuff for like market gardens and stuff like that, and they stress that they're like farmers because they, I guess, focus on the food production thing. So why is it you think that you think of your garden as a garden and not, like, say, a farm?
I don't know. I think it's just going back to my roots, to be perfectly honest. And it's my garden. No matter what size it is, I'm out in the garden. I can't really
Sounds
say.
so grand, like 10 acres of garden. Like I can try to picture it. It sounds amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, you have to think, right? Like in total, like there's pathways through there
Yeah,
and there's
for sure.
the big roadway to get in the back. And so, I mean, it's probably not 10 acre. I'd say between 5 and 10. I don't really know. But yeah,
Either way, it's impressive.
it's impressive. I mean, the cornfields are beautiful, right? I love walking through my cornfields. The kids have fun back there. It's picking corn is really, really fun, right? Potato fields are beautiful. I really like that, like your crops are ready at different times. So you get to spend times in different areas. I like picking, when the sun is setting, when it's a little bit cooler. It's really pretty. So it's my happy place. I guess that's why I call it a garden and not a farm. I don't really know. Nobody's ever asked me that question before.
Well, I kind of like it because, like, in the way that you talk about it, like it surprised me when you said 10 acres, of course, but like it feels like you have the same relation as you would to that 10 acres as you would your garden. So like it's big and small at the same time in a way, or maybe close, maybe, or I don't know what the word is for it, but it's like I get that it's definitely different to you. Like how you're experiencing it, like that comes through, I guess. And so I guess that would be the real reason.
Oh, good. Well, thank you.
And the garden is just for your family, correct? You don't sell anything from there?
Oh, no.
or-
We sell
you
crop
do?
vegetables right from our store. So we sell
Okay.
everything from corn, potatoes, beets, carrots, squash, cucumbers, beans, onions, pumpkins. I'm probably missing things, but yeah. So when you come into my store, there's a shelf um, on your left-hand side that right now has some pottery from a local vendor. Um, but in the summertime, it's full of vegetables. And then also, if you order online, all my vegetables that are in season are available to be included with your online order. So we don't do a CSA program or anything along those lines. That's how we sell our vegetables.
Here, before you got to go and get back to work, if people want to get a hold of the product, they want to get where do they get a hold of you? Where do they get a hold of the product? How do they get in touch?
So we are located on Main Street in Blizzard Valley. So people say it's the farm, call us the farm strip. So we get a lot of people coming through. They'll stop and see me. They'll stop and see Truly Northern Farms. They'll stop and see Family Roots Farm. They'll go to the cheese factory. So we're on that strip. And right now, so once we're in full swing, because we try and pick, we not try, we do pick fresh every day. So we're open. We really try and flip our garden on a daily basis. So we are open 6 days a week in the summer. Right now, I do take a little bit of a break. Well, not the break is ending, but we're open right now. My farm store is open Wednesday to Sunday as well. You can find us online at triplestaracrefarms.com.
Okay, perfect. Thanks again. Thank you very much. And it was great talking to you.
Thanks, Steph.
You're welcome. We'll see you soon.